tell you exactly who's going to be on right now. That's Ross Colbert, the global strategist, Beverages with Rabobank. How are you?
Great, good to be here.
Ross, I think you were one of the first people I met. You probably don't remember it when I came to BevNet in 2011. And,
back in the day.
And if you're a novice to the beverage industry and you talk to a beverage titan like yourself, it's kind of a weird experience, actually. I mean, and the interesting thing is now, you're covering global beverages. I mean, you're following all kinds of trends that are just not even happening in the U.S. right now. But my question for you is, or at least my first question for you is, what are some of the trends that you're seeing outside of the U.S. globally that you think could have an impact here over the next decade?
Right. Well, thanks for that intro. I appreciate it. Globally, one of the big trends I see going on right now are the consumption of coffee as a hot drink around the world has really changed in the last 5 years, particularly in emerging markets. We get where you have traditional tea drinking cultures that are discovering coffee for the first time. India, Asia, Southeast Asia, Korea, and the coffee sector is booming in some of these markets. And I think it's a reflection of how socially coffee has become, how social it's become, whether it's the coffee shop culture, the connectivity it provides around the world. And obviously companies like Starbucks and others are taking advantage of that fully and doing a great job of bringing great coffee culture innovation around the world. I'd say the other big interesting global trend is craft beer. You're seeing for the first time craft brewers migrating through joint venture, through partnership, through investing in beer companies around the world. And as beer consolidation continues to accelerate, I think craft is finding a nice tailwind to ride with some of these global brewers into emerging markets.
Now, you mentioned coffee culture. And it sounds like it's more than just a liquid. There's something about coffee that's a sort of communal kind of beverage in certain ways. Can you kind of expand on that?
I think, look, coffee is a bit of a social lubricant, right? It's a need state.
As is craft beer, right?
Yeah, it's a need state that everyone appreciates and recognizes that coffee brings people together. It's healthy. It's got some great health attributes that are just really now coming to the surface, whether it's Alzheimer's or heart-related, cardiovascular-related issues. Coffee's got a great story. It's also got transparency, sustainability. It's got a neat backstory that resonates with young people around the world. It's also one of the few beverages that I've seen where you get this huge step up in premiumization. You think about the average cup of coffee, 20, 30 cents versus what you'll pay in a Starbucks or some artisanal roaster. So there's a huge gap for premium or premiumization, unlike many other beverages. It's not quite the same. Well, craft beer doesn't have that same level of premiumization yet.
It's interesting you say that because craft brewers might disagree with you on that. But what we're saying, and please, if you, so for example, the Brewers Association, which is the trade group that represents craft brewers in America, really try to pump in this argument that what they're selling is of a higher quality than the domestic options that are available, significantly higher. But you disagree.
Look at it this way. The average six-pack of craft beer today, based on IRI data, is about $9.99 a six-pack. Okay. When you look at Ballast Point as the sort of super premium gold standard in craft beer today, that averages about $15 a six-pack. So that's the price gap, right, between premium and what you would call super premium, the high end. Coffee is much wider than that. So I think there's still a lot of headroom for growth in some of these categories like coffee. I think tea, what we've been trying to follow more closely is can tea ride the coattails of coffee and premiumization, right? And it's a little harder to do. The styles of tea don't always lend themselves the same way coffee does. But I still think there's a lot of growth and headroom for both coffee and tea globally.
So Probably my last question on coffee is, the biggest player in coffee, Starbucks, recently unleashed its resources to promote cold brew, and they're starting to use they're starting to do nitro now in this country as well. Cold brew has just been one of the fastest growing trends that we've seen over the last few years, and Starbucks getting deeper into the category. How do you think that's going to affect how people think about cold coffee and iced beverages?
Well, I think it's a great innovation. I love the nitro infused cold brew coffee. I think it brings together some of the elements of carbonated soft drinks with a natural, refreshing product. I think it's a very interesting. I hate to use the word it's a threat because it's not big enough yet to be a threat, but it will pose at some level a challenge for energy drinks, as you see energy drinks, constantly, under scrutiny about what health attributes they have or don't have versus a cold brew coffee, which perhaps is a little more authentic, a little more transparent. So it's a
we see some of those things taking place already just in the packaging. We're seeing a lot of these cold brews come out in energy drink style cans and putting the caffeine right on the front. So
exactly.
It could be an interesting thing to keep an eye on. Here at BevNet, so we continue to look at trends and innovation that are happening at the entrepreneurial level. You've walked around a little bit. You've seen a few things. What are some of the things that sort of surprised you about what's happening on the ground with these entrepreneurs?
Well, first and foremost, the energy in the room here is palpable. It's great to see so many new faces, fresh ideas, a lot of innovation. I spent some time talking to a gentleman that has an alternative to high-pressure pasteurization, using ultraviolet as a means of providing quick pasteurization of juice without any heat or degradation of the product. And as an alternative to HPP, which we all recognize is slow and expensive, I think that's great innovation. It's early days. He's looking, he's got a couple of pilot plants running in Europe, but I think that's something that holds a lot of promise. From a packaged goods standpoint, I've seen a little bit more emphasis on maple, a couple of maple products here that seems to be getting some traction, albeit it's quite a kind of a unique regional taste profile. But I've also seen some hemp tonic, which is also very timely, clearly on trend, and I think this also has some potential.
So I think some folks would question that because hemp is one of those things that's kind of a divisive subject, just based on what it is. But you've described it as on trend and timely, and that's really interesting to hear, actually. So, why do you feel that way?
Well, look, I travel around the country a lot, both here and outside the U.S. You can't help but notice the developments in hemp and the marijuana industry and the ancillary products and services that are coming on the heels of that. And I think people's acceptance of hemp as an alternative, I think is becoming more and more mainstream. Whether it's hemp milk or hemp tonic, I think there's a consumer out there who recognizes there are health benefits to it.
And when do you see that category as being really emergent, I guess, in this country?
Oh, it's
in terms of beverages.
Look, it's very early, right? It's in its infancy, but I think these are things to pay attention to because big ideas often start with the smallest of a few products, and it's really up to these early movers to sort of take advantage and build out that consumer base, and others will follow. So it's interesting to keep an eye on it.
Ross, I could talk to you for hours and hours, and it would still be really interesting.
Right.
Unfortunately, we're out of time.
I'm the closer.
You're the closer.
Yeah.
You're the man. All right.
I appreciate it.
Well, I really appreciate you taking
Thanks,
the time
Ray.
to be with us. This has been great, and
Good to
I'll
be
see
with
you
you.
later on for a drink, I think.
Thanks, Ray.
Maybe a craft beer.
Or two.
Or two. How about that?
Thanks.
Thanks so
Appreciate
much.
it.